Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. Do you remember on the day of September? I've gotten over them. And today I'm going to do a wrap-up of everything I've read since I last spoke to you about the books that I've read. And it's quite a good selection here, and I'll take you through it. Try to be super fast. Okay, when I last spoke about what I was reading, it was The Emperor of All Maladies by Siddhartha Mukherjee. And I was a few pages in, and I read the whole thing. I think the first 2/3 probably stronger than the last third, but outstanding. Fine piece of science writing. This goes there with Sherwin Newland's book, Paul Kalanithi. If you've got any love of doctors, in this instance an oncologist, writing about what goes on inside our bodies and what makes us work and sometimes not work, then I would recommend this. This is the first book from that New York Times list of top 100 books of the 21st century. This was the first one that was on that list that I hadn't read, that I have now read. I'm not guaranteeing to go through and read everything else to complete my thing, but this takes me up to, I think, like 67 on that list. And there are a couple more that I maybe will get to, but no great rush. It's just, it's a great surfacer of ideas, but it's not prescriptive. So that was The Emperor of All Maladies by Siddhartha Mukherjee. Terrific. I've got a few graphic novels. I'll do them all in one go here. I bought the second volume of My Favorite Thing Is Monsters by Emil Ferris, published by Fantagraphic Books. And in order to remind myself, before I read it, I read the first volume again. This was giant. Look at the size. That's bigger than my head. This was the first volume, which came out. I read this in 2018, and hotly anticipated. And this was, if you don't remember, this is it's a book heavily influenced by sort of horror movies and tropes of the sort of 50s and 60s, and written in this sort of biro on all online notepaper, and the pictures are just spectacular. And this first volume follows this is the narrator who sees herself as a monster, and so always draws herself like this, but it's about her family. It's about a murder that happens upstairs in their apartment building. It's about secrets. It's about really super intriguing, and ending on a giant cliffhanger where you don't really know what's going on. And so we waited years and years for the second volume, My Favorite Thing Is Monsters, book 2, and there we have our protagonist and narrator on the cover. That's her brother there on the back, Dees. This was slightly bigger, but also just as gorgeous. Sometimes the pages are colourful, sometimes they're sort of, let's find you a big splash. There's some real psychedelic stuff here, and dreams, and and there's a lot of sort of parodying horror comic book covers, stuff like that, and just all sorts of fun stuff. This one goes a bit nuts, and so we have Nazis, we have sort of underground sex cults, we have weird, just some weird stuff. This is blurbed on the back by Art Spiegelman, Alison Bechdel, Chris Ware, so the sort of godparents of modern graphic noveling. This was not great, disappointing after that first one, mostly from a plot perspective. There's so much going on here, and not a lot is tied up, and this is supposed to be the end. There's no intimation at all that there will be a third volume, and yet this doesn't answer the questions that were there. It just turns the whole thing into a bit of a shaggy dog story, and a little disappointing. Okay, so that was My Favorite Thing Is Monsters, book 2, and I read book 1 again, just to remember where I was. I'll do the other 2 graphic novels I got here. This is my first ever Marvel Epic Collection. This is Craven's Last Hunt. So this is, I guess, from the early 90s, late 80s, and the stories covered here are the death of the Hobgoblin, which I actually have the individual issue of that, and a lot of angst, what we hope Spider-Man type angst. There's a fair bit of Wolverine in this, which is nice. And then when we get past that whole storyline, which is shocking enough in itself, Spider-Man accidentally punches someone in the face and kills them, accidentally, reacts, and which could happen anyway, as it not really a good guy, and therefore, or someone who was wanted to die and was asking them to kill her, and Wolverine was hesitating because he had a relationship with this person, and Spider-Man accident. It's a bit grim and distasteful. But then we get this storyline, which is the reason I bought this, which is Craven's Last Hunt, which was a 6-issue series which ran over. There were 3 monthly Spider-Man titles at the time, and so it ran over, what would that be, over 2 months. one in each of the 3 monthly titles, and then so 6 parts altogether. And it's a fantastically dark story. Craven was a sort of minor villain in Spider-Man's world. Even there's going to be a movie coming out shortly with Aaron Taylor Johnson playing Craven, Sergei Kravenov, the hunter, and it's sort of a weird character who, Spider-Man always defeated, and he was a bit, funny looking because he always dressed in this fur and was a hunter, and just sort of weird, to be in an urban setting where Spider-Man was always your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So this weird looking character who should be in the jungle somewhere or on the veldt or I don't know where, never quite fitted in. But in this story, Craven is at the end of his tether, so to speak, and has a final plan to deal with Spider-Man, and executes on that plan with absolute precision in a terrifying way. I remember reading this in individual issues. My friend had it, and I sitting down and not going. I wasn't so familiar with Spider-Man at the time to understand quite how weird this was. But it is a sort of really, I think, strange 6-part story within these arcs that run for 50, 60 years. We have Spider-Man and his supporting characters. Mary Jane's in here and Aunt May, and there's a minor villain also called what's it called? Vermin is the sort of rat-like creature who lives in the sewer, and also pretty grim what he does. This is not sort of robbing banks and stuff. There's some nasty attacks going on here. And then what happens between Spider-Man and Craven? What happens to Craven? What happens to Spider-Man in this arc? I don't think I've ever read anything quite like it. I think it holds up. Craven's Last Hunt, it was subsequently called, I think during publication it was called Fearful Symmetry, taking its name from William Blake's poem Tiger Tuck, which is rewritten as Spider, Spider, burning bright, what immortal hand or eye can frame thy fearful symmetry. But it's more popularly known as Craven's Last Hunt, and because it was collected, that's why I bought this edition. I had some birthday money and splashed for this. Well, $45 new. I didn't pay $45 for it from Amazon, but still a hefty amount to pay on a single thing. Okay, that's that. Then I'm continuing my run through Deadpool issues which I missed. If you don't know about comics, what often happens, a character will have his own title. It will be published for a number of issues, often with a creative team. So a writer and artist may collaborate on a number of issues. The writer may leave or the artist may leave. Another team may take over. And then usually, or often what will happen is that the series will come to an end and be relaunched, because when you have a new number 1 issue, that gets people interested again, and usually it will be relaunched with a new creative team, or sometimes they just relaunch it with the exact same creative team. There's no rules to these things, but I finished the Daniel Way run. I got 4 of those omnibuses, and I spoke about that, and this is the series that came after that. It was relaunched by Brian Posehn, and I don't know what Mr. Duggan's second name is, first name. Jerry Duggan and Brian Posehn. And the only reason I know Brian Posehn is because he is an actor who you may recognise from television. If you see him, if you do a search on Brian Posehn and you see what he looks like, you'll go, oh yeah, I've seen that guy in things like The Big Bang Theory and lots of other stuff. And he came on board as a writer. So he's an actor in sitcoms. I don't know how successful or unsuccessful his career is, except he's one of those, that guy kind of people you'll recognise. And he came on board and wrote this series and wrote a number of issues. So I had the first 3 omnibus volumes, and this has several editions. I think this has like 15 comics in it. So this is sort of what they would call a sort of, I don't know what they call this, but it's not a trade paperback, which usually has 5 or 6 issues. It's on an omnibus, which can have, say, up to 40 issues. This is somewhere in between. And I did the first of those, and quite enjoyable, a little more supernatural than the last series, which was more different. Okay, that's enough comic books. What else I read? Continue my project to read Hercule Poirot in publication order. I read Murder on the Orient Express, which probably my first ever experience with Poirot, is seeing the movie, what do you call it, Albert Finney movie. Love Albert Finney. I saw him in the theatre a couple of times. Much missed, and one of the great actors of all time. And he plays Hercule Poirot in the sort of 1974 version of the film, which has got one of the most, no spoilers, one of the most amazing endings of any detective series, any bit of crime fiction I've ever read. And it's so great to go back to the source material and find out that it's all here on the page. I know there was a remake with the Kenneth Branagh directed and stars Hercule Poirot, which I started trying to watch on Disney Plus the other day, and the opening scene is set in Jerusalem, right at the Western Wall, and then I just thought I really didn't have the energy to watch the whole thing. Maybe I will. I probably would sit through the 74 edition. That's a factor of becoming old, that I have less patience for the sort of the way things are done now. That even makes sense. I don't know. I watch a lot of crappy superhero movies. Anyway, Murder on the Express is fantastic, excellent. Hercule Poirot. I'm still in single digits like this, maybe 8 or 9. And I've got like 40 of them to go, so I will keep plowing ahead. Then I read some short stories. I read No One Belongs Here More Than You, stories by Miranda July, and I read this because I was really intrigued and really looking forward to reading all 4s. I loved the reviews, made me want to read it, but I'm not in such a rush. I'm going to wait for it in paperback. Then there's a book club that in Israel, a real life book club that I joined, and they were reading, last month they decided to read Miranda July's first novel, which is The First Bad Man, I believe, and I had already bought this. So I went to the meeting. We spoke about The First Bad Man. And I said, but I read a different book altogether. I read short stories. Haven't read short stories for a while. These were great. Certainly in that George Saunders vibe, and this is from 20 years ago already. But I would like to read all 4s. I don't know if I'll go back and read The First Bad Man. I will try and pick up all 4s when it comes out in paperback. But it was good to have an introduction to Miranda July. And if you like short stories, if you like George Saunders, I'm sure this will appeal as well. After that, I read the first of Evelyn Waugh's Sword of Honour trilogy. This is Men at Arms in this gorgeous Penguin edition with the Quentin Blake illustration on the cover. And this is post Brideshead, I think written in 52, the first of the trilogy. And we've got Guy Crouchback, a Catholic soldier who's a little bit too old to be called up for the Second World War, but sort of uses connections to get a commission as an officer, and goes to officer training school. And there's a lot of sitting around waiting for something to happen. Something happens, you have to get on a train and get to a certain place, and then when you get there, they're sitting around because no one knew you were coming. All this happening in England, all long before they ever get sent to theatre of war. Some fantastic set pieces, including an exploding toilet. Later on, there's a sort of really exciting and bizarre bit of action on a beach. I mean, this is not a thriller. This is not an exciting book. This is a book about the absurdity, the futility, the uselessness of this particular character, and his inability to fit in with his surroundings. Really enjoy this. Really pleased that I decided to pick up this trilogy, and I've got 2 more of these to go. I won't read them tomorrow and the next day, but over the next year, I'll get to the next 2 volumes in the trilogy. That was Men at Arms by Evelyn Waugh. Then I read some Frontlist, Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. This is my 3rd Anne Patchett after Bel Canto and The Dutch House. I didn't read Commonwealth or one of the others, but picked this up because it was I managed to get it at a good deal while it was still in hardback. Just as it was coming out in paperback, they reduced the hardback price. I love this. It's perfectly lovely. It's not groundbreaking. It's not trying to do anything special or different. And maybe the fact that it's Reese's Book Club there on the cover, maybe that's a hint. That's I don't want to say anything negative about it, because I enjoyed every bit of this. It's except for one aspect, which I don't think I'm even going to talk about. But it's a story. It's got plot. Things happen. You find characters. They have in many ways decent relationships with each other, where they communicate honestly and share their feelings and become vulnerable, but and wistfully think of everything that happened in the past. I thought there was plenty to love here, and I could definitely recommend it. I don't think it's groundbreaking anyway, but then maybe things don't have to be groundbreaking. Not every novel has to change the way you think about things or give you a unique new perspective on things. This is just about a family, a woman who once made a movie and once was on the periphery of success and fame and chose a different path. And then this is her as a 30 years later, when her children are already in their 20s, and they're saying, well, what about this and what about this, and what actually happened when you were at Tom Lake? Tom Lake is a place, not a person. What actually happened, and what about that famous actor that you once knew, and tell us more. And I got to and dredging up the memories, honouring our one's past, feeling nothing but fondness for our youth, both our own and the youth of the others who we shared that time with. I think it was perfectly lovely, but that may be damning with faint praise. Tom Lake by Anne Patchett, read it. Then I read something maybe a little unusual for me, but this was such a massive bestseller in the UK, and then I saw it in paperback, and Amazon had it at half price in paperback, so I picked up Rory Stewart's Politics on the Edge. And I know Joe Spivey, I always think him as Kevin Turvey. Hi, Joe. Thank you for tagging me in a tag that I haven't done. He had started reading this. He got a library copy, probably even cheaper than I got my new paperback copy. He got the hardback. But I actually read this in a day and a half, whizzed through this in 2 sittings because it's so readable. For those of you who don't know, so Rory Stewart is one of the presenters of a podcast called The Rest is Politics from Goalhanger Productions. Goalhanger Productions is, I think, Gary Lineker, the former England football captain and now a millionaire commentator, is now a millionaire podcast mogul. And one of his, I think the flagship podcast was The Rest is History, and spun off on The Rest of Politics. And The Rest is Politics, and the one I listen to is The Rest is Entertainment, which is one of the voices on that is Richard Osman, who writes all the Thursday Murder Club books, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, The Rest is Politics is Rory Stewart, who is a former Conservative MP in the UK, it's possible I have never read before a memoir of a Conservative MP or anyone who identifies as a Tory. But this was super fun. He's a super interesting character, Rory Stewart. He didn't just burn his bridges in writing this book. He's no longer an MP, if that's not clear. He was even expelled from the Conservative Party after his time, as he was 10 years. He was a sitting politician in the Parliament while Tories were in government. And he didn't just burn his bridges in writing this book. He sort of river-quied them, rolled up the explosives and fell on the plunger and blew every single one of his bridges into smithereens. But it's jolly entertaining, and he has something to say about David Cameron, something to say about Boris Johnson, all the politicians that you may or may not be familiar with since 2008 onwards up until last year, and when Theresa May was the Prime Minister and stood down, Rory Stewart actually put himself forward to be leader of the Conservative Party, and if he'd won that race, he would have been Prime Minister. He didn't, spoiler. Anyway, this was really rushed through this. Look, it looks almost unread because I just could not put it down. Read it in one go, 2 goes. Rory Stewart, Politics on the Edge. If you've got any interest in UK politics, or those names mean anything to you, or you're interested in what the hell happened around Brexit and its aftermath, then this was super fun. Now I'm currently reading, and I will read this over Shabbat, is Craig Johnson's As the Crow Flies, which I think is the 8th in the Longmire series, and these are just dependable. I think Steve Donoghue read one recently and reiterated about how reliable the writing here is. Good, the nature writing is great, the detective work is muscular, and the procedural is just clean, and there's lots to love here. We always talk about reading diversity, and people talk about reading around the world. I'm not sure that I've read any other book set in Wyoming, and so I'm happy to carry on. I've got a few more of these in the series to get to before I have to chase down any more. I've already got them on my TBR, and I keep feed them in once or twice a year. They're just super good. This is from 2012, so I believe Johnson's still writing them today, so I haven't even caught up to where we are now yet. That's where I'm at, and I just thought I'd give a tiny little preview of Victober. I have 2 books that I want to. We got next weekend is Rosh Hashanah, and it's Thursday, Friday, and then Shabbat, so 3 days where I will have no TV, no phone. Where I'll do a lot of reading. I'll be in synagogue in the morning each time, so I've got a lot of reading planned up, which is great for Victober. And then after that, we've got Yom Kippur, and after that, there's more holidays as well. So we've got short weeks. The next couple of weeks at work will be relatively short weeks. And for Victober, I have lined up, first of all, I've never read Wilkie Collins before. I've got this lovely edition of The Moonstone. This is a Pan edition from, I don't know when this was published, sort of 60s, I'm guessing, but I don't think it's ever been read. It's pristine. The print is a nice size, and this is going to be my first introduction to Wilkie Collins. And I also, if I'm feeling good, I might also try and squeeze into October another Victorian author. And when I finished the Palliser series, Trollope's Palliser series, I've already read the Barchester Chronicles, so I did 6 of those, 6 of the Palliser series, and I made a video about what should I read next. And the one that I wanted to read is an autobiography, but I've also got The Way We Live Now. I think I might read, because this is actually a refreshingly short for a Trollope, and just to sort of give some perspective, I think this is the last book that he published, but just to give some perspective before I dive back in and then read some of the standalones, I think I'm going to try this before The Way We Live Now, and then that will free me up to pick up each unread Trollope as and when I come across them. And that's it. That's a long catch up. God bless. Bye.